Let's discuss this and more with CNN political analyst and White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour, Laura Barone-Lopez, former RNC Communications Director Doug Heye, and CNN political commentator Maria Cardona. Maria, what are you hearing from Democrats? How concerned are they about these suggestions that the president's age is a problem?
They're pissed off more than anything else, Wolf, because if you look at the story, and you had it exactly right, most of the people that are going on the record, and frankly, most of the sources, are all Republican. And I spoke to some of the senators, Senator Reid, Senator Murray, who were in the same exact meetings that the Journal describes, and they told the Journal exactly the opposite. They were not quoted. Gee, I wonder why. And the ones who were quoted, specifically Kevin McCarthy, he is known, and you have other journalists who are saying that they have heard on the record completely the opposite. He says that President Biden in his negotiations was smart, was savvy, was tough. And so I guess if Kevin McCarthy is on a rebranding tour, which is what we have since heard, he's probably mad that the guy who's the current president is the one who is responsible for him having lost his job because he's so tough and so savvy and completely outsmarted him. I think it's a complete political hit job, and I also don't think the timing is coincidence. Now that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, I think Republicans are a little desperate to try to distract because they know that the majority of the American people are not going to want a convicted felon in the White House.
Let me get Laura to weigh in. When you read the article, what did you think?
Well, I think that look, I've heard similar to Maria from Democrats, which is that are Democrats concerned about voters' perception of Biden's age and his mental ability? Yes, they are. Voters mention that regularly. But Democrats themselves who are in the meetings with President Biden, they say that he's all there, that he's sharp, that he, switches between policy topics to other policy topics as needed. And you got a sense that they were very frustrated because they did speak to the Journal reporters and they weren't quoted in this. Donald Trump also has an age liability, and you hear that from voters as well. I mean, in focus groups that I've watched, voters repeatedly say that they're not happy with the age of either of the candidates and that they wish there were other options, but ultimately they're going to make their decision based on vastly different issues than the candidates' ages.
Go ahead. I want you to weigh in as well. Go ahead.
Well, I go back to the State of the Union when Joe Biden gave a very long, very loud speech, and Democrats said Joe Biden is fully in charge. The game has changed. The game hasn't changed. The polling hasn't moved. Biden is either up one or down one or two, and depending on what poll you look at. And the polls all show the same thing. Voters are massively concerned about Joe Biden's age. They're also concerned, as Laura pointed out, about Donald Trump's age. But what we see, or quite often don't see, is Joe Biden out front and in center and in command. I watched him yesterday, and he was fine, but he wasn't a strong commanding presence as a commander-in-chief. Maybe today and tomorrow will be good days for Joe Biden because he may be the youngest person in France or, around all the veterans. But he's got this very real problem, and he's in a job that ages him faster at an age that ages you faster as well. It's a very real problem for him, and it's not just one article. This has gone back since the day he's been elected.
But I think it's also an issue for Donald Trump because you have a lot of articles out there and frankly video where you have Donald Trump is the one that is stumbling. And I also think it's important to note which of these candidates has had generals, former staffers, people at the highest levels of government, open letters with signed names saying this man is not fit to hold the highest office in the land. That's not Joe Biden. That is Donald Trump. And again, I go back to now that he's a convicted felon, I really think Republicans are desperate to try to find something else shiny. They know that this is something that voters are concerned about, so they focus on that. I think, to your point, Laura, this election is not going to ultimately be decided on the age of either one. It's going to be decided on what each one has offered the voters. And when you have seen Donald Trump recently, he's more disengaged. He is ranting and he's all about retribution and getting back at his opponents, while Joe Biden smartly is focused on what he's going to continue to do for the American people.
I would say, well, all of this really raises the stakes for the debate in a few weeks here on CNN.
No doubt.
This is going to put a laser focus on whether or not either of these candidates has a senior moment or some kind of a stumble.
Because they're both, Biden is 77? Biden is 81. Mm-hmm. Trump is 77. Mm-hmm. So they're not spring chickens by any means.
No, they're not. I mean, voters are clearly going to be paying attention to that. One thing that's also striking when you talk to some voters who wonder, based on the clips that they see across social media about Joe Biden, they go and then they go to his rallies or they go to an event and they stop by and they see how he sounds. They tune into the State of the Union, see how he sounds in a longer format, and then they tend to be surprised. You know, there's this element also of lowering expectations, which Donald Trump's campaign did ahead of the debates in 2020, and then Biden overperformed the expectation in those debates. And ultimately, a lot of the voters I talked to after those 2020 debates were surprised by Biden's performance and said, oh, he's actually not bad. And I think you could potentially see that, as long as he doesn't have a senior moment, as Doug said, see that in the upcoming
4 years
debate.
ago, Biden, according to the polls after the debates, Biden did better than Trump.
He did. And
Yeah.
look, but this is, I think, part of the problem for Biden is we're very acute of his aging faster, that he's not the Joe Biden that he was 4 years ago. Okay, neither is Donald Trump, but this issue is more of a focus on Biden than it is Trump. Trump is a ball of energy. You may not like that energy, but he's a ball of energy. And I watch Joe Biden, and he reminds me, Wolf, so often of seeing Frank Sinatra towards the end of his career. He comes out and Come Fly With Me goes really well, and then he struggles to remember the words to My Way, which I saw not too far away from here at Merriweather Post Pavilion in '94. That's a problem for Biden, and it's again why this debate is so critical.
I'll go back
for
to
Biden.
something that I heard in a focus group from voters, and that is, look, yeah, both dudes are old, but I would rather have old and steady than old and crazy. And that's where I think a lot of voters are going to be focused on, and that helps Joe Biden.
Maria, Laura, and Doug, guys, thank you very, very much.